Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today's video is actually pretty cool. It's from a channel that I'm sure everybody knows. Kurzgesagt. I think Kurzgesagt is the way it's actually said. A decade ago, so 10 years ago, they gave a prediction of where the world is gonna be, and they go over that how it is now 10 years later in this video, and then they're going to do one in 10 years from now to see how their predictions were from now, if that makes sense. Their illustrations are great. I hope I don't get in trouble for using their video because they're just so awesome. Their channel and stuff is going to be in the description on top of my stuff. George Orwell stickers, they're eating the pets magnets, and these super cool t-shirts. Look at that. Anyways, let's watch this video. A decade of war. Let's watch it.
10 years ago in 2014, we asked if
war
was over. Based on long-term trends in the last century, it seemed violent conflict was on the decline and the world more peaceful than ever. Our video began with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the war between Hamas and Israel. And, well, a decade later, we could start this video exactly the same way.
Yeah.
But is the world as a whole more violent today? In a nutshell, we made 7 claims in...
Is the world as a whole more violent today than it was 10 years ago? 10 years ago, 2014. Let's see. So 2014, what was happening in 2014? You had wars. You had wars in Afghanistan. The economic crisis in 2008 didn't happen too long before. That was 6 years prior to that. I wonder. Wasn't there a lot of civil wars happening during that time? I don't know. 10 years ago,
2014.
I was a youngin'.
1. We have less conflict deaths than ever. 2. There were almost no more wars between countries.
That's not
3. Democracies don't fight each other. 4. Borders are mostly fixed. 5. Most conflicts are in areas that were under foreign control, either by colonial states or Soviet dictatorships. 6. More civil wars are ending by diplomacy. 7. We're in the most peaceful period of history.
I don't think they got a lot right from that list of 7 things. Just saying. Sorry, I don't mean to pause the video so much, but yeah. From what's going on right now, I don't know.
So, let's see how our video has held up. First, let's get an overview of conflicts in the last decade. Some of the deadliest conflicts that were glowing hot in 2014 have since ended or significantly cooled down. The war in Afghanistan ended with the victory of the Taliban. While the civil wars in Yemen and Libya are all still ongoing, they turned mostly into stalemates. The proto-state of ISIS in Iraq and Syria has been wiped out. And, breaking news, the rebels just won the war in Syria last week. The extremely destructive civil war in South Sudan ended in a fragile peace agreement.
The rebels won the war in Syria last week, and then Israel used it as an opportunity to go and attack. So there's a lot of shit going on right now.
Despite violence still flaring up in the devastated young country. Sadly, the last decade saw a bunch of new conflicts erupt, or old unresolved issues turn violent. One of the main claims of our video 10 years ago was that wars today are not between countries, and this is still largely true. Civil wars are by far the most common type of state-based conflict in the world. We'd wager that most of you have never heard about one of the deadliest civil wars in decades, the 2020 Tigray War in Ethiopia. It ended in 2022 with the victory of the Ethiopian and Eritrean government forces against rebel groups. Exact death tolls are unknown, but they may exceed 500,000, mostly civilians.
That's crazy.
Aside from Tigray, a number of new civil wars have broken out since 2014. Although new is a bit misleading since the underlying issues were brooding at a smaller scale for a long time. The deadliest have been the Sudan Civil War, the civil war in Yemen, and the civil war in Myanmar. Multiple nations in Africa like Mali, Nigeria, Somalia, Burkina Faso and Mozambique are
My dad lives in Mozambique currently, and there is some shit going on there. He runs a guest house, and there's just cancellations after cancellations at this guest house because nobody wants to go there because of the civil war that's going on in Mozambique. That's nuts.
suffering from Islamist insurgencies that destabilize countries and have cost tens of thousands of civilian lives. Lastly, there are nearly 60 smaller unresolved state-based conflicts around the world, many going on for decades, that are smouldering but have a relatively low death toll in comparison. Maybe the worst news is that we've been seeing interstate wars again. There was the short-lived 2020 war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which redrew contested borders. Then there's the latest war between Israel and Hamas that turned into a regional crisis. What is certainly the most disturbing new development is the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. It's the first large-scale interstate war in 20 years, and the first war since World War II where a major power is trying to conquer territory and to subjugate another state. It followed an 8-year conflict that started with the 2014 Russian annexation of Crimea and the war in the Donbass. Exact casualty rates for the war since 2022 are hard to verify, but they go as high as hundreds of thousands. Okay, so what about our 2014 claims? If we add up the numbers, we see a few things. Roughly between 2004 and 2014, there were about 350,000 deaths from state-based conflicts worldwide. They were going down from 2014 to 2019 and then rose sharply in 2021. In total, from 2014 to 2024, we saw about 1.2 million deaths. If we include all violent conflicts like the Mexican drug war, the number rises to 1.5 million, 3 times higher than the previous decade. Actually, 2022 had the highest death toll from violent conflict since the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Damn.
The Tigray War and the war in Ukraine alone were responsible for the majority of lives lost, as both wars involved armies of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, sometimes thrown against entrenched positions in human wave attacks. So, the last 3 years have been unusually violent. But if we zoom out a bit more, we can put those numbers in.
Look at that's insane. Last year, which we would all deem is a ton of people that died, or last 3 years, a ton of people that died during the war that's going on around the world. The ones in with Russia and Ukraine, or just the other ones with Israel. And living in a time where that's happening in real time, you're thinking, wow, that's crazy. That's so many people dying, which it is, a lot of people dying. But you compare it to World War I and then World War II, that's insane. Over 6 million. Look at that. Compared, it's nothing. What happened the last 3 years, it's nothing compared to the time between 1940 and 1945. 5 years. Wow. That is scary. That's scary because it shows the magnitude of what us as humans are able to, to achieve. Like we can, and that was prior to us having, like easy access to nuclear weaponry. Imagine now, when you think about it like that, we're all dead. Like, if somebody were to piss off the wrong person, we're all dead. That's it.
Into perspective, a terrible thing, but nowhere near how bad it can get when the world goes to war. In the grand scheme of things, we are still living in relatively peaceful times. But the next decade will show if the trend will reverse or if the last few years were an anomaly. Unfortunately, there have been proper wars between states again, so our prediction on wars between countries didn't hold up. What is as true today as in 2014 is that almost all armed conflicts in the world are in countries that were under foreign occupation in the 20th century, either by colonialism or by the expansive Soviet dictatorship. Ethnic groups were split apart or forced together by arbitrary borders, resources unequally distributed, or power vacuums created, which led to conflicts that are in many cases still unresolved. There have also been no wars between democracies who seem uniquely unwilling to fight each other. So compared to the last century, it's still true that war between nations is still an exception rather than the rule. On the other hand, we see fewer civil wars end by diplomacy. Instead, there's an increase in either victories or stalemates. These often aren't permanent resolutions to the conflict, only pauses in the fighting, because the underlying causes haven't been solved. For our claim about borders, we can see that most international borders in the world still hold up and are not challenged, but there are still a few dozen territorial disputes in the world, most of them in Africa and Asia. And some are getting hotter, like the border clash between India.
Borders meaning what? How easy it is for people to cross into your borders, or is it borders of like countries? Because isn't I saw in like the U.S. there was pretty much nothing, so I'm confused on what they mean by actual borders.
And China over Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh. China's claim to Taiwan, or Venezuela threatening to annex part of Guyana's oil-rich province Essequibo. One thing that makes wars so deadly is that they're often supported by external powers. Many countries are providing support or arming up different sides or factions, like the competition between Saudi Arabia and Iran for hegemony, with Iran being the main supporter for the Houthis, Hezbollah or Hamas, or in the Ukrainian war, with the West supporting Ukraine, while China, Iran and North Korea support Russia. But it's not just countries. External powers keeping conflicts alive can also be Islamist groups like ISIS or criminal networks, or even local elites that benefit from their own country being torn apart and effectively prevent conflicts from ending.
This is World of Warcraft, but there's no classes because there's archetypes instead. An archetype is a fusion.
The end of the rules-based world. There's a lot of debate among experts about what factors make the world more or less peaceful, but there are no easy answers. One of the major reasons the world has seen less conflict was that after the end of the Cold War, many countries expected a sort of rules-based world order, and for a time, this worked somewhat. But things have been changing in the last few years. The world has become multipolar, with new alliances forming, and the idea of a rules-based world is being challenged. China's manufacturing capacity is now as big as the US and Europe's combined. With its massive economic development, a new superpower has risen. It's common knowledge that the US spends more on its military than any place in the world, but this may no longer reflect the true balance of power. China doesn't report all of its military spending like the US does, and it gets a lot more done with each equivalent dollar spent. Recent estimates trying to account for these differences tell us China's effective military budget is now a significant portion of the United States' budget. And with Russia breaking the taboo of launching the first war of conquest by a major power in almost 80 years, Europe has begun the process of rearming. It is slow because, well, Europe is slow, but it is happening. We're in the transition to a multipolar world again, with different nations and alliances claiming spheres of power they want to dominate. In this climate, tensions and conflicts between states have been rising, even if most of them have not turned into wars yet. So, is war over?
No.
The clear answer is no. And the direction we're headed in doesn't seem great. But with all the gloom, it's also true that we are still in a peaceful period of world history, and that deaths by war are still at historic lows. The world is at a crossroads. We'll do another update video in 2034. Let's all hope we'll have better news for you then.
Let's hope the computers work when it comes to 2034. That's in 10 years from now. A lot could happen. But isn't that an interesting video? Man, if you don't know Kurzgesagt, you should absolutely go watch them. And you can become one of the little birds that's in the videos. It's very cute. I like it. But as always, I appreciate all you guys for watching. I really do. It means a lot, especially when you guys click the videos and you leave a comment. It's awesome. If you want to support the channel, please leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. On top of that, if you want to go above and beyond, you know what you can do? You can click the link down below. We have stickers there. High quality stickers. This one is a George Orwell inspired sticker from Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. If you know, you know. And we also have, look at this shirt, right? It's a cool shirt. It's a cool shirt. You know it is. Link down below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I can't speak. And I will see you all in another video.